Here we go. Attention to the journey of worship. The shift here is from checking off the to-do list in worship to an experience of and encounter with the Holy. We've all been in worship services that go like this. Right? And we've been in worship services that went, oh, ooh, woo, shoo. And you know what? They're over before we know it. Our sense of time is it's so bizarre what our brains do with a sense of time. When things are segmented, first we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then our brain starts to parse that out and it just feels like forever. But if things flow from one to the other, and the story moves and the journey goes and we go from the heights to the depths, it's over before we know it. And we lose all sense of time. You felt that, right? You felt that. Worship ought to be a journey from beginning to end. So there's some things that we really need to pay attention to for that. Now, I told you that one of the things I think that's most detrimental to our worship is worship that feels the same. Everything feels the same. I get asked, Marcia, what do you think is the worst problem in worship in our day? And I say, worship that is flatlined, right? Worship that is flatlined. So we do need vital worship, but here's some vitality killers. All right? Vitality killer, the first one is forgetting that it's all about the people's work of worshiping God. It's all about the people's work of worshiping God. It's great that we have this humongous band and singers, and they sound terrific, amazing. But how do you get that there? Right? There's this, as a worship leader, I get to play in this little river right here and say, whoo, come on. It's all about the people's work, right? In the theater, in the theater, like I used to play, like this one, we call this a black box theater, and we call this 3 walls, and then we call it the imaginary 4th wall, right here, right? And a really good performer is one whose energy permeates the 4th wall, and you feel like they're dancing just for you, or speaking just to you, or singing just to you. Now, what's the 4th wall in our sanctuaries? Sometimes it's a real wall. Sometimes the rail, right? The chancel, the edge of the chancel. Sometimes it's a modesty rail, you know. So worship that is felt in the whole of the space has got to get the energy from here to the whole of the space. One of the things that I'm sad about in this space, although we're going to just we're going to transcend the architecture a couple of times while we're here, is that there's no center aisle right there that we can all turn and be. In the last 2 annual conferences and at General Conference, we have our communion table in the center of the body. Oh, that's good stuff. When we all get to turn and face that. But I'll often do that, especially if you have a center aisle in your church. Give that light of Christ coming in, give it its own moment. Sing, Alleluia, Alleluia, as that light comes in, and you all turn and face it, Alleluia, Alleluia. Give it mystery, give it awe, give it its own moment. Instead of having the kids come in during the verse of the hymn, when everybody's looking at their hymnal, completely miss it. Give it its awe and moment. All right? I'm getting ahead of myself because that's making ritual rich as well. But it's all about the people's work. How do we get the feel that worship is happening in the whole of the space, not just up here? All right. So, other vitality killers. Here, are you ready? Come on. Too much of a single medium back to back. When we have words upon words upon words. I used to be in musical theater. I played Eliza Doolittle, and she sang, words, words, words. I'm so sick of words. I get words all day through. Yeah. Words, words, words. Too much of a single medium back to back. If you have a litany, then a prayer, then a, right? Vitality killer. Too much singing back to back. Song, 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 song. Friends, we got some really groovy songs from the evangelical church when contemporary worship came in. But that music was born in a denomination that knows how to build the energy and needs 11 or 12 times to get it there. Us United Methodists, we have a problem with this. Just doing something 11 or 12 times does not build any energy, because you peak at about 4 and then you go. And musicians, the 10th or 11th time is infinitely more interesting to you because you get to do all kinds of different things than it is to the congregation. And it's all about the congregation. It's not about the music, right? It's about the way that the congregation embodies that music. So we have to be careful about that. Too much action back to back. So and then the length, too long of a single medium. A song too many times, too many words, too long in a ritual action. All right, another vitality killer. Little attention to transitions. What I talked about. We often practice the stuff, the pieces, but then we don't think about how we're going to get from one to the other. We finish a hymn, we all sit down, and then the reader gets up from the 10th row back there and goes. So, thinking about transitions. If you're going to have a journey that flows, that isn't segmented into little tiny bits, you got to think about transitions. It's not rocket science, but it does take an attention to it. These folks back here, production crew, I said, I do a cue to cue. That's a theater term from my theater background. But all it is saying, how do we get from one thing to another? And it just takes a little, and it just takes the reader, telling the reader, in the last verse of the hymn, come on up. And then it takes paying attention to that, because they'll look at you and go, now? Is it now? They will. Bishops do it too. Because they're nervous in the moment, and that's fine. That's fine. Everybody gets nervous. But one of our roles can simply be, it's called the Marcia nod. That's all you need. Right? And thinking about, when can we sneak in? Did you notice? Did you notice that when our co-lay leaders spoke the last two lines together, their volume came up, their sound came up, and that was the time when we brought in the music for the next song to come in underneath, so that we were ready to go right into, it really isn't that difficult, but it does take a frame of mind, a thinking about how you're going to do that so that it just flows. All right. Transitions. Another vitality killer. Unclear, confusing, too many or too few instructions. Oh my gosh. Nothing will kill a new thing more than saying, okay, we're going to do a new song. You've never done it before. And there's a part where you'll sing, and then there's a part where I'll sing. And then, low voices are going to start, and the middle voices are going to come in, and then a high voice, and your anxiety level is going up and up and up, right? Didn't do that. We just did it, right? Low voices go. And we had support, right? So I know this is all technical stuff, but this is what, underneath it all, makes it work. So I hope you're just taking some notes here. Another vitality killer. No intervention in the case of a liturgical disaster. I have seen frozen bread. I have seen acolytes catch themselves on fire while we were singing "This Little Light of Mine." How many times do we stand there and watch a child trying to light something and it won't light, and we all just sit there and watch it? Always have a backup. How many times has the acolyte gotten up there and the candle's out, the light went out, and you're running back with the lighter? I'm coming. Always have a backup. A lighter there, a lighter there, a lighter over here. Lighter in the pocket. Communion lines. This is mainly for big conference stuff, but I always tell servers at conference things, inevitably there's going to be one line that has way more people than all the other lines. And then we get done and we're all sitting here watching one line. So I tell servers, if you see that, go please prevent the liturgical disaster over there. Because we're all sitting there just going, oh dear God, how long will this be? Go to the back of the line, have the last half turn around and take it, do whatever you can. But don't just sit there and watch. Act. So I always usually have a couple of what I call stewards of the space. Stewards of the space are people who can go and serve people who can't come and do a ritual action, right? So who are more comfortable staying in their seats, who can serve those folks. They have their eyes out for that. And folks who can do these things like run a lighter up and relight the thing or whatever, but have a couple of stewards in the space to care for those things. All right. Vitality killer. All right, here's my last long list. Long sermons. Okay, now I don't have a thing against long sermons. What I have a thing against is sermons that have 3 or 4 endings. How many times have I been a worship leader and I sit there and it's like, oh, this is a great sermon and they're coming in for the home run and I'm like, yeah. And then they turn the corner and tell another story. Here's the thing. The problem with writing your sermon on Saturday night or even Friday, which I know none of you do, is that you don't have time to edit. We all need to be edited, all of us. And so part of our being faithful stewards of our people, of the people of God, is to plan ahead far enough that we can really hone, we can have a craft. It's not just sermon writing, it's also worship stuff. It's also when you write litanies and prayers and things like that. Especially when you write prayers that are meant to be spoken by the whole people, don't just write them in your head. Speak them out loud then, and you will find the things that you will trip on. The words that would, that was way too much. So, editing time. Long verbal transitions going on and on. Usually this happens when you haven't written out exactly what you want to say. Now, it doesn't mean you have to write everything out and say it exactly that way, but you have to think through it first, rather than just open your mouth and begin to talk, because you will always say more than you need to say if you haven't thought about it beforehand. Short silences. Let us come to God and confess our sins. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's enough. Worship leaders, you are always more revved up in the moment up here than folks out there. Our rhythm, body rhythm is going, so I always will time myself because I don't trust my own sense of time because I'm a little more revved up here. And you know when I say worship leader, I'm not talking about the stereotypical worship leader like with a guitar or a microphone. I'm talking about preacher, anybody who's up there leading the people, okay? I just want to make sure we're on the same page on that because I use that in a little different way than some people do. Long silence, dead silence, awkward silence. Silence is a part of your tool belt, but there is a difference between intentional silence and awkward silence. So knowing how to use silence. Preachy prayers, Lord have mercy. Prayers are not meant to be mini sermons where you recapitulate the 3 points in your sermon. At an annual conference I will not name that I was just at, you know, they had people praying before every vote. And this one prayer, this guy got up and he literally gave God a recap of the agenda of the entire conference in the prayer. Prayers have very specific, bold language. The best workbook you can use for clergy and lay alike, anyone who prays in public, is Lawrence Holstucky's Let the Church Say Amen. Change the way I prayed. Bold language. It's very specific kind of language. And so that's a wonderful resource. So anybody who prays in public, really learning the kinds and forms of prayer. Ruth Duck's Finding Words for Worship is another wonderful one. The kinds of prayers and what the purpose, the liturgical purpose of those prayers are. The difference between a blessing and a dismissal. These are all wonderful skills that we must have that makes our worship richer and more concise and more poetic. Worship ought to be more like poetry than prose. most of the time, right? The Psalms is the liturgy of the ancient people. All right, so how are we doing? Okay, we're doing good.
This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence. This is my day. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. I'm lost without you. You are the air I breathe. You are the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. You are my daily bread. You are my